What's up, guys? I'm here to talk to you about a critical concept in biomolecules, and it's phosphorus, okay? Phosphate compounds. I'm here with a few critical concepts that happen to be alive. These plants here, my goat friends, and soil, okay? A lot of people don't think of soil as alive, but it's actually a matrix of living organisms, bacteria, fungi, small animals, that sort of thing. Don't get my fingers, guys. What a beautiful sheep. Anyway, so with these three, I'm going to explain the most easy concepts about phosphorus and the phosphorus cycle, okay? So it is a biomolecule, phosphate groups are. Every single living cell has phosphate in it in critical places. Every single cell membrane is made of phospholipids, so there's phosphate in every single cell membrane. These goats, this plant, all the microorganisms that are alive in the soil and everything. Also, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the energy molecule for all life. Furthermore, phosphate is also in DNA and RNA. So every single living cell, even viruses that are not alive, have phosphates in them. So, of course, we have to discuss the phosphorus cycle. Now, these goats here, whoa, watch my fingers. These goats, goodness, they're getting nippy here. Anyway, my goats here are going to get their phosphate from the plants, from the phosphates that are in these living cells of these plants here. Then, as these goats defecate, poop or pee, then those phosphates are going to get broken down and returned to the soil. Or, if and when these goats die and decompose, those phosphates are returned to the soil. Now, you guys are getting a little, there you go, pal, there you go, all right. Getting a little close to the fingers there. Anyway, when these animals poop, pee, or die, the phosphates that were in the plants are going to be used by the goat and then going to get excreted by the goat, or when the goat passes away and decomposes, then it'll be returned to the soil. Now, this is a critical concept with this particular biogeochemical cycle, is that there is no gas phase. Let me say that again. There is no gas phase. It's going to go down into the soil. These phosphates will become water soluble and will go down into the soil. As it rains and water percolates down through the soil, that'll take those phosphates with it. And the phosphate molecules tend to accumulate in the subsoils. So we have in soils, and you'll see this when you get into the soils unit, you have an organic layer, then you have an A layer, and then a B layer, which is where things tend to accumulate. And that's where most of the phosphates are. There is no gas phase like there is with the carbon cycle or the nitrogen cycle or water cycle or any of those that can end up in the atmosphere. Phosphates don't. They typically, most of the phosphorus is found deep in the subsoils or in the various layers of soil or in living organisms. And that's where it tends to cycle. Eventually it all ends up in deep ocean sediments. Those ocean sediments eventually become mountains, continents, etc. And then it's in the rocks, those sedimentary rocks. As those break down, then those become water soluble and then get added to the living organisms, go through the food chain, and then back into the sediments again. And that's where most of our biogeochemical cycling happens. Because of this, the phosphorus cycle is by far the slowest to fully revolve, by far the slowest of the biogeochemical cycling. Carbon, water, nitrogen, all of those cycle very, very quickly in the environment. Phosphorus doesn't. Phosphorus can also be found in molecules that are intended to stimulate plant growth. We call these fertilizers. Phosphorus is very, very important for plant growth, particularly when it comes to flowering or seeds. So many crops are fertilized very, very heavily with phosphorus runoff or phosphorus-based fertilizers. They also tend to have a lot of nitrogen. Those fertilizers, those man-made chemicals or anthropogenic chemicals, can also run off into the water in excess, much too great a concentration. My goats here are never going to put off anywhere near the kind of of phosphorus pollution that can come from a huge industrial fertilizing project on an agricultural field. When those molecules run off into water, nitrogen and phosphorus, they cause an excess of algae growth. That eventually leads to hypoxia in an aquatic ecosystem. So phosphorus can be really, really good for stimulating plant growth and for stimulating my living ecosystems. What's up, goat? Like all my goats and deer and birds and everything else, it can stimulate a living ecosystem by stimulating plants. But it can also be too much and can become a source of pollution. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing.